Hey guys, you know who it is, you know what time it is, and this is the fall of the Soviet Union. Remote learning, week 5, Cold War. All right, so we've been talking about some war the last few weeks. We talked about the Korean War, we talked about the Vietnam War, we talked about potential nuclear war. And now we're going to go into the Middle East, where the Soviet Union is looking to invade Afghanistan because they want to get their hands on that precious oil. So in 1979, the Soviet Union is like, hey, we already occupy a huge chunk of the Middle East. Why don't we go into Afghanistan and we're just going to go in there, take it over, make it communist like all these other countries, and it'll be easy. Well, the Soviet Union didn't realize that Afghanistan was going to be calling on, of course, the United States to come help them out. So the United States gives Afghanistan all kinds of weapons and aid, like money and things like that, and help out Afghanistan. Another thing to note is that Afghanistan has actually never been conquered, except for that one time by the Mongols, but like that was such a long time ago. But in modern history, Afghans have been able to protect their borders from absolutely everybody. They know their land best. It's really mountainous, wicked cold, wicked hot. So Afghanistan was pretty much an impenetrable force at this time. So the United States, also trying to hurt the Soviet Union, did an embargo of grain shipments to Moscow. And they also boycotted the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. I know. You're thinking right now about the miracle on ice. Ugh, I have to stop my husband from coming in the room to talk about it. But it all has to do with this time period. And the war in Afghanistan ends up lasting between the Soviets and Afghanistan for about 10 years, and Afghanistan wins. The Soviets have to abandon their, you know, posts in Afghanistan. And it's just a sign that the Soviet Union isn't as strong as it once was. Its flex is coming down. So the man at the helm during most of this is Mikhail Gorbachev, and he takes over and he's like, "We got to fix the Soviet Union. We got to rejuvenate this Bolshevik vision. We have to make it this a country for the people." And actually, he really wants to modernize a lot of the way the communist government was running in the Soviet Union. He's like, "Why can't we have communist socialism? Why do we have to have everything be?" So cut off from the rest of the global economy. He really saw that the Soviet Union was going to lag if they did not get in the trading game, especially since they had been cut off with China. So this is Mikhail Gorbachev here. So he instituted this thing called economic perestroika. Funny fact, when I was typing this really beautiful slide, I spelled economic wrong, but I spelled perestroika correctly. Don't know why. The word always sticks out in my mind. But really, what it was supposed to do is to address that labor discontent. Because what was happening was people were all making the same wages. It's one of the biggest gripes of communism, where people are doing less work and making the same amount of money as somebody who's doing that, um, the more work, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm trying to say here. So it was a way to create pay scales and to address who was going in which jobs. So now there was more freedom of choice in terms of labor picking. If you wanted a certain job, you could head toward it. Also, this idea of private property and moving toward that free market. So allowing people to open up their own businesses and sell the products to whoever they want is something that Perestroika was trying to get at. So again, it's like trying to still be communist, but have threads of socialism within it. Another policy that Gorbachev wanted was this thing called the glasnost. And of course, it has to do with openness, clarity, being able to be seen through, and allow for open political debate without fear. Because there had been a long history of if you spoke out against the government, you would be sent to the Siberia, you're going to be in the gulag. So this idea was that there would be people having freedom of opinion. And he also wanted to have openly contested elections beginning in 1988. So allowing debate and people to go out and vote and to have options and being selected a true president. So, everyone's always talking about transparency. Gorbachev was talking about glasnost. Gorbachev also wanted to decrease the military spending. He had seen that they had been involved in Afghanistan, which was a blunder, and try to get people kind of excited about the military in the sense that it's there to protect the Soviet ideal. It's not to go out and to waste money, to waste lives. So he is looking at trimming back the military and utilizing it for defense purposes only, less aggressive purposes. So many people were involved in military projects. It actually was not a good look for him, just like how we think about American military spending, and then you don't think about all the people that work in the factories that produce all of those different products and how essential those jobs are for our economy. And Gorbachev kind of, by reducing that spending, cut at that. So this was not one of his best looks. One other thing that happens is, so we have these open elections in 1988. And then what's going to happen is all of these Eastern Bloc countries, so these countries that were um, basically taken over by the Soviet Union after World War II, really start to have their independence cemented in 1989. And I'm sure that you guys all think of, or maybe you don't at all because it didn't happen in your lifetime as it happened in mine, but I think of that Berlin Wall coming down. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And that happens in 1989. And that really was the physical representation of the Soviet Union falling, that they did not have the power, that communism was crumbling, and that things were changing, that these people were going to have options and opportunities in their lives they had never had before. Other places that have revolution are Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, and they're all looking for that sovereignty to be independent, to not be part of the Soviet Union anymore. And these countries had all had their own revolutions in 1968, about 20 years prior, and they were slapped back down, and the you know restrictions tightened in those areas. And by 1989, under Gorbachev, he's seeing that this empire is too big, they're wasting too much money, they won't be able to achieve traditional success if they have all these different minority groups lumped in that don't want to be there. Like you have the Hungarians, you have the Czechoslovakians, we have the Germans, like all those groups made up a very small percentage of the population of all of the Soviet Union. And he was like, we got to focus on Soviets first. So we got to get rid of our grip on all these places. And it was a big deal. So you would think that everyone would be like, oh, Gorbachev, you're the man. But really, what happened is all the people that had helped him throughout the years gain power saw Gorbachev as this traitor. They saw him as a Democrat. They're like, what are you doing? You're all about democracy. Like, you're all about the West. And they started to really turn on him. Gorbachev, he's like, I don't want to abandon communism and socialism. He's like, I want competition. I want to be able to keep up. I want to innovate like the West. And all of Gorbachev's former friends are like, no, this is not us. So they actually overthrew him. Conservative forces overthrew Gorbachev and they put him under house arrest. And so this guy, Boris Yeltsin, he had been a member of the Communist Party since the early 1970s. He's down here in the corner. Yeah, he looks like Soviet Bill Clinton. But Boris Yeltsin was like, I am another option. I am not strict communist, but I am also not as uh, into the liberalism, like the not it's not traditional liberal. We think about it as like Western ideology, like this democracy and the free capitalism. So he was like, I'm not as into the free capitalism as Gorbachev is. So I'd be like a happy middle ground for the people. So Boris Yeltsin's like, guys, we can't be acting crazy. We can't have this military coup. And it dies down. The people are like, all right, Boris Yeltsin, you're going to be the voice of reason. Sure, we'll listen to you. Gorbachev, people don't trust him anymore. The Communist Party, under the advice of Yeltsin, is going to collapse. I'm putting that in air quotes in my house here because really what it is it is rebranded, and Yeltsin is going to be at the head of this new, it's really like a socialist party, is like a Marxist socialist party. So trying to get back to those roots. And on Christmas Day of 1991, the Soviet Union is officially toast. It's going to be Russia. Boris Yeltsin is going to take over. And you can see he's here. There's an American flag behind him because he's talking to the American people. This is Yeltsin. He's going to start kind of fixing the relationships with a lot of the Western world, which is really what Gorbachev wanted to do to begin with. And it's interesting that Gorbachev had all these ideas and he really was like pushing the ball down the hill. And then when it finally got rolling, Yeltsin was the one who took credit for it. So that's it. No more Soviet Union, no more Cold War, the United States, Russia, friends again. Have a great week. Bye.